Hello, everyone, and welcome to Overtime. You may have noticed I've changed a little bit. I'd like to thank Dr. Reverend Christopher 𝐓𝐢𝐬𝐷 Jr. Esquire for the show yesterday. That was a 15-hour stream. Thank you for that. Thank you very much. I enjoyed producing and hosting for 15 hours straight. It was actually a delightful stream. It was for charity. He had to eat some lemon bars, and I had to shave this, but it was for Pennsylvania Food Bank. So we sincerely appreciate everyone who came and helped out. We would like to thank all of our mods who went over there to help out, and it was a joint dinner table in time production, and I think it worked very well. So thank you for that, but that's also why it's a babyface suitor today. I'm going to have to emphasize this coat just a little bit more to make me look a little more grown up. You see, I can wear a suit. So thank you all for that. We are simulcasting on In Time and Overtime. We will be ending the In Time simulcast. That's a little tough because we like to have this on In Time. In Time is the channel that is monetized, but we need to be moving it to Overtime. So join us on the Discord. We're discussing the hows and whys of that and everything else that we've been covering between Ukraine and the upcoming handover of Congress to conservatives, the what's now near constant assaults on the U.S. power grid from people shooting at power stations and so on. So we'll continue to cover all of that. Like I said, if you are watching this on In Time, the link to the Overtime version of the show should be pinned at the top and should be accurate in the description. Not to last week's, but to this one, so please follow that. We are, I think, blessed to be able to have resources like Operator Starsky, who can come on and tell us, in his own words, what he is seeing from behind the lines, from inside Ukraine. So on this, the 309th day, nearly a year of the invasion, I'd like to welcome Commander Lance McMillan and Operator Starsky to the show. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's a lot to cover. I'd like to. I think we're going to end up discussing, certainly just in the last few hours, the country of Belarus has filed a formal complaint and summoned the Ukrainian ambassador over what they claim is Ukrainian air defense missile that landed in Belarus we're going to talk about that. A few other things. It looks like the Russian economy, while definitely contracting at least 2%. It was anticipated would be 3.6 or more as a result of the sanctions. That means that the sanctions, while working, haven't been as effective, and we're going to discuss what Russia is doing to expand its own efforts in the war, including reaching out to China. But before we do that, Operator Starsky, I was hoping you would fill us in. It's been a week since you've been here. What's been going on in that last week?
It was tough. Regarding Belarus, it's a funny thing that 300 days passed. More than 300 days of this invasion passed already, and finally, some piece of Ukrainian weaponry reached Belarus. That what Lukashenko was talking about prior to this invasion, showing all those things on the map and stuff. Finally, some kind of Ukrainian weaponry reached their territory. It was unintentionally, of course. But it's kind of funny. So yesterday we had a New Year missile strike in Ukraine. So Russians decided to congratulate us with the upcoming New Year holiday, and they shot 70 cruise missiles at Ukrainian cities. I think around 7 a.m. we were tracking their ships, battleships, basically missile carriers that were being deployed in the Black Sea. And later we received a message about 13 strategic bombers that took off over the Caspian Sea, which usually indicates the upcoming missile strike. So basically, we were already prepared, and 70 missiles were launched. Yesterday, we had information on 69 missiles. Today, we have new details that actually there were 70 missiles, and 54 or 53 of them were shot down and intercepted by our anti-air defense. My guys proudly shot down one of those missiles. They're awesome. So my brigade is also involved into anti-air defense of Kyiv, as you probably know. And they managed to intercept one of those cruise missiles using the manpad 𝐒𝐬𝐜𝐿. Soviet manpad. We discovered that those manpads are actually not bad in terms of intercepting Russian cruise missiles, and we use them widely, let's say. And because it was a failed strike, pretty much, we know that a bunch of those missiles hit residential structures. There were few impacts into our power objects, but the damage wasn't severe, and this strike was pretty much failed. So that very night, basically tonight, they conducted another strike using Iranian drones. We know about 16 drones that were launched. Majority of them were targeting Kyiv, but they were all intercepted by our anti-air defense, and none of them reached their target. Few of them, again, were shot down near my location. So we had a pretty fun night tonight.
It sounds it. I follow you on Twitter, and I saw your I never know how to approach these things because you seem almost cheery. You're holding up your coffee, you're like, well, another night of attacks, but we're all still here. Cheers. And it's a beautiful act of defiance, but it's a stark contrast to what I have to believe is the terror. You also posted a image that linked to an article about what it's like to live in fear for now over 300 days, and what it takes to do that. If Starsky's Twitter is in the description, so if you don't follow it, I think you should. You've got an amazing sense of humor for what's going on, and we've shown some of your shorts as well. So I think you guys should all follow him on YouTube and on Twitter. I think it's worth both getting educated on what's going on, but seeing it handled with dignity and as much humor and zest for life as one can put together under these circumstances. As I said before, and we had a question about this, we are simulcasting on In Time and Overtime. The reason is we are moving all of our news content off of In Time. We'll still have the interviews, we'll still have the discussions on In Time, but people who are just interested in our more news and current events, that will be Overtime. Since it is a new channel, it has to start from scratch. It has to start from zero. That means it's not monetized. All of our donations, all of our super chats today will go to the charity of Starsky's Choice, which is linked in the description, but we can't do that on Overtime. So we are simulcasting this on In Time for a period of time for people to move over. If you can come to the Overtime channel, give us a sub, help us hit that 1,000 mark, and then it can operate as a full channel like In Time. But until then, we're stuck with the limitations. The Restream bot, for those who are asking, it's actually mirroring the chat, so you can chat in either one and the people can see you in both. It's a little frustrating, but it's a nice way to combine it. We will be shutting down the In Time stream in about 2 minutes, and right when I'm saving it until Commander McMillan says something snarky, and then I'm like, oh, we lost the stream. So if you want to see the rest of the show, yeah. I should have killed it already. If you want to see the full show, it's available live on Overtime. Link is in the description from In Time, and it's also pinned at the top, and our mods can help you get to that channel. Again, a huge help if you can subscribe to the channel. We're trying to hit that 1,000 mark, and it's very important. But until then, like I said, that'll be going down in a minute. If it goes down, you can still see it on Overtime, so hop on over. Commander, I'm going to pass it off to you to ask away as I do some more production stuff.
Sure. One of the things that I've noticed in listening to various blog posters on YouTube and reading a bunch of articles and such, it's sounding increasingly like the Russian military's discipline and cohesiveness is just dissolving. We have massive numbers of desertions. I've seen at least 2 separate videos of entire units who aren't at the front, they're back at mobilization centers or whatever, getting, equipped and ready to be sent to the front, literally breaking down the gates and walking away. At what point do you think the situation's going to change to a point where the forces fighting on the front lines are actually going to just start falling apart to the point where they're offering almost minimal opposition to the Ukrainian forces? I mean, what kind of things would you be looking for in that regard?
So currently the only thing that works against Russian morale, it's from what I noticed and from what my colleagues noticed, is the information about their losses. Because in Russia, in Russian information field, they completely isolate their target audience from this sort of data. And basically what they say to Russian citizens is that less people die in this military operation than in car accidents every year. I swear. And
Russian road system must be very deadly then.
Yeah, considering the fact that the biggest amount of their content produced on YouTube is basically those car incidents.
Yeah.
the biggest engagement, the biggest reaction from Russian trolls, Russian users, we received during as a response to this sort of information. Whenever we are talking about their losses, showing footage of hundreds of those Russian soldiers scattered on Ukrainian soil and things like that. That inflicts the biggest butt hurt for Russian users, basically, and obviously it means that we should continue doing so, continue informing Russians about their losses, because it works. It's something that they don't want to show to their audience. They have this magic number 93, which I think 93%. So it's 93% is the percentage of personnel that returns home alive from from this military operation.
Color me very skeptical about that number, but okay, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds very optimistic. And I think that we should inform them better about this, because currently they want to fight. So we saw numerous cases of those Russian mobilized troops criticizing their commanders and fighting them and stuff like that. But the problem is, it's not like they're scared. They want to fight. They seem to be willing to go to war and do their duties, but they don't like the very treatment in their army, because it completely sucks. We saw a lot of footage again of those Russian officers beating up their soldiers. There was a recently published footage of one of the Russian commanders beating those mobilized soldiers with a stick, obviously punishing them. And that's the kind of treatment they have in their army, because their army historically involves this like prison culture. They have this ΔΕΔΟΥΣΧΙΝΑ, so-called, in the army. So it's, for example, when there's a conscription army, the soldiers who served a bigger term in the army, they unofficially have more rights than other soldiers, and that's why they can use them as slaves and torture them and do different despicable things.
Steal everything they have when they show up.
Yeah, absolutely. And this descends from the prison culture. So basically, in the times of the World War II, they had strafbate, which were basically convicts, like today we see with those Wagnerites. They used battalions that were formed from those convicts, and those convicts brought this culture to their army. That's why it still persists there. We had same problem in Ukrainian army prior to 2014, I would say, because again, Ukrainian army for a while was part of Soviet Union, and we all had that. All countries, even those republics on the east of Russia, Far East, they all had that Dedovshina, that element. We got rid of that, luckily, but we can still see that in the Russian army, and that's one of the reasons why they have such problems there.
Yeah. So, if I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly, what you're saying is that the breakdown in discipline is less to do with the fact that the Russian soldiers, don't want to fight than they are objecting to the way they're being treated, both in
Yes.
terms of the brutality of how discipline is enforced, and also the fact that they're being sent to the front without proper equipment. So yeah, I can see that being a factor. Do you think at some point, if the situation continues to deteriorate, that discipline may break down to the point where it starts to become they don't want to fight and they're just leaving because they're tired of all that?
That can happen. I don't think that it will be the breaking point.
Okay.
I don't think that it will have the biggest impact on this war, of course. But I think that there will be numerous cases, and those cases will only grow in numbers. And I'm sure that we will see a lot of that very, 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 very soon.
Okay. So, tying into what we just talked about, one of the things that I've read recently is that the number of Russian military flights going to China has increased dramatically in the past couple of weeks. It used to be there were maybe one or two a week. Now it's up to somewhere between 6 to 10 a day. And the speculation is that they are bringing back winter uniforms, cold weather gear, because they don't have enough of their own in storage. Do you think if that's true, that's indicative of the fact that the Russians have kind of started to realize that the discipline problems are perhaps connected with the fact that they aren't really logistically prepared for the mass mobilization they have, all these troops, the harsh weather conditions, lack of supplies to equip those troops properly?
I think it can be the case, but again, I don't think that bringing winter uniforms will solve all the problems they have in their army, of course, because they have problems with their MREs, with their food supplies. They have problems with their equipment. I'm not even talking about their weapons. We saw them using like Mosin rifles that are very old.
World War One era.
Basically, yeah, and their bags that they're using, their gear is also between World War One and Two, something like that. So they have a lot of problems. The biggest problem, of course, is the treatment, the brutality that their commanders show towards the personnel. They are being told directly that you are a cannon fodder, that we don't care about you, and things like that. That is the biggest problem, and they cannot solve that. I think probably that's the main problem that they have right now. Yeah. Even besides bad weapon and equipment.
One of the things that I thought was interesting is the number of intercepted telephone calls from soldiers on the Russian side that have been coming through, saying that they have not seen their commanders in some cases weeks or even more than a month. So if that's the case, who's in charge? Who's leading these people at the front if none of their commanders are present?
Good question, probably, but it depends on what type of commanders. Commanders of battalions, companies.
Yeah. where is the breakdown of commander as opposed to low-grade officers?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
a
I'm
valid
sure that
point.
I'm sure that they communicate with their squad leaders, definitely, probably with their platoon commanders, of course, because we know that during these more than 300 days, we already eliminated more than 1,500 lieutenants. Basically the level of platoon.
Yep.
So they have quite a few problems with that.
Do you think because of those high level of junior officer casualties that perhaps there is some sort of, I won't call it a professional NCO corps, but at least some sort of leadership amongst the NCOs beginning to rise to fill that power vacuum?
Yes, absolutely. They don't have other choice.
Yeah.
There are cases when even soldiers are doing duties for their NCOs. Soldiers, I mean privates. In Ukrainian language, soldier is a rank.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, their role will grow because it's a natural thing. This is how it's supposed to be in the first place. But again, their NCOs, even despite the fact that they take command in numerous cases, but still they don't have that proper training that proper NCOs usually have.
Yeah, so that they're still not displaying any real sense of initiative. They're simply somebody who's waiting for somebody above them to give orders. So.
Absolutely, it's just the same private given other patch.
Yeah. So I would think that as the conditions, the battlefield conditions worsen with the weather, the lack of ammunition, the lack of clothing, the lack of food, as those kind of conditions get worse for the Russians, are you seeing an increase in the flow of personnel surrendering to Ukrainian forces?
We see them surrendering in big numbers, but
has it been increasing in the past couple of months, or is it kind of holding at a steady rate?
I would say it's holding.
Okay.
It's holding. The problem with those surrendering Russians is that a lot of their convicts surrender to Ukrainian armed forces, and usually nobody wants them. It's like they're changing prison in Russia for prison in Ukraine, basically.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to exchange them, and I think it was like a smart move by Prigozhin, to recruit those convicts, because nobody cares about them. They can use them as cannon fodder and sacrifice them in huge numbers, and they don't even want them back when they are captured.
Makes sense.
But while we're on it though, but that hasn't been leading to an increase in friendly fire incidents in large part. You've got convicts who are out there and either are not qualified or have any idea how to operate the machinery, and or they get upset with somebody and they do what hardened criminals do, which is just take out the gun and shoot someone. We've heard reports that that's a problem. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, sure. We heard about that as well. There are numerous cases of shootings between Wagnerites. So they have this scheme, okay? For example, in Bakhmut. In Bakhmut, they have different units within this Wagner group. There are assault units. There are mobilized. There are those convicts and things like that. And usually convicts, so mobilized and recruited Wagnerites, don't let those convicts to communicate with other people, like with local population and other units within Wagner Group, because they shouldn't know anything about like their losses and stuff. And of course, they're being told that Ukrainian troops are running away and they are scared and destroyed and things like that. Wagnerites are basically guarding those convicts. So when the attack starts, a group of those convicts is usually being sent to some position. They crawl like 500 meters to some specific given position that they have to take control over, and they are covered usually by automatic grenade launcher, machine gun, and heavy machine gun, and they crawl to this position for a while. Of course, a lot of them die. We have constantly those drones monitoring the area, and they crawl to this position knowing that Ukrainian troops probably fled, and if they don't reach that position because they die, they send another group that again told that Ukrainian armed forces left positions, they are scared, and they don't have ammunition and stuff. So they send waves of those Wagnerites, and of course, while crawling to that position they have to take, they are also used as a so-called reconnaissance by fire. Okay, so it's when we open fire at them and Russians discover our fire positions, and then they can target them with their artillery and things like that. They do that all the time. They probably since 2014.
Yeah.
And yeah, because they have a lot of personnel, they don't care about it. So the group of those convicts approaches this point, a waypoint, and they start digging a position, or if it's, for example, a Ukrainian position, they attempt to take it. And in most cases, of course, they fail. But we know that they have something around 30 to 40,000 men in this Wagner group used on the territory of Donbass. That's why basically they have like endless resource of personnel to sacrifice on a battlefield. We captured a lot of them. Recently, we captured Belarusian senior sergeant, praporshik in Russian military, and so he served in Belarus. Then he retired, and then as soon as he learned about this recruitment, he joined Wagnerites, and basically he gave up to Ukrainian armed forces, to my brigade, because he said that he was beaten up in this Wagner group. They treated him like a piece of crap, and he said that there was absolutely zero discipline, something that he saw in the army, but rather that prison culture and those prison laws that they lived by,
Yeah, and as costly as those tactics are, they can be quite effective, because if you send these guys out 3-4 times a day trying to infiltrate and get into the same position, eventually one of those groups is going to succeed and take the position, and then the Ukrainian forces have to expose themselves to counterattack and retake the position, which costs them casualties. And yeah, it's playing into the attritional war cycle, which, because the Russians have a much larger population to draw on, they can afford those losses, whereas it's much more impactful on the Ukrainian forces.
Yes, absolutely. This is basically quantity over quality.
Exactly.
And it's vice versa. In our army, we have to save every trained specialist because we spent years for training this specific professional, and also he is experienced. He has survived through this whole time since the beginning of the invasion. And when we lose every man, it's a tragedy, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything from you, Nick?
Yeah, so a couple of other ones, and I want to talk to both of you about some of these. Well, first of all, I'd like to make the point. I really I find that interesting. Well, you know, hey, we lose more people on our freeways than we do in the military. Yeah, I can say the same thing about cyanide. You know, here's a glass of cyanide, and it's okay to drink because more people die on our freeways than die of cyanide poisoning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a great argument. Oh, for fuck's sake. So, and I do want to actually, while I've got everybody's attention real quick, yeah, once again, we're all our news is moving to the Overtime channel. If you can subscribe to that, that really helps us out. We are not able to take super chats right now while the In Time channel is not streaming. Dick, I got your message, and and Starsky, you know Dick Dawson, what is it? The biggest dick on YouTube. Was that the correct, at any rate? And I think you'll be seeing him tomorrow. Maybe both of you, even over on the shills. But he pointed out we could be using Streamlabs. We do have a Streamlabs account, and I just didn't think of it. So thank you so much for that, and we'll make sure that that's up and running by next time. But it's growing pains. This channel needs to get up. If once it's up, we get struck a lot, and we get struck because the YouTube algorithm is broken when we quote the President of the United States saying something crazy. Even if we mock it, ridicule it, which is a given, that's what we're going to do. Now, the former president, let me rephrase that. When it's Trump saying something crazy, we ridicule it. We still get hit for misinformation for having repeated it in the first place. And we usually win those appeals, but not always. Splitting the channel helps insulate against that kind of problem and a few others. And it just makes it easier for us to get the people who want certain kinds of content, that content. So it really sucks splitting it because we have to essentially start over. Those of you who have subscribed already, we really appreciate it. It makes it easier for both In Time and Overtime, and just we're gonna get you guys the content you want specifically to the people who want it. It's a great move, but the growing pains suck. But thank you, Dick. I think that's a good solution and will help make it easier. So thank you for that. So Belarus says that a missile, I forget the kind of missile, but I forget the specific name, but apparently it was an anti-air missile from Ukraine, they say, landed in Belarus. They're very upset because they don't like the idea of war coming within their borders. Who knew that's unfortunate? Anyways, so what do we know about that? Did that actually happen? It looks like it did, but you know, are they really outraged? Is this mock outrage? What's going on here? And I'll start with Starsky.
Yeah, so I believe it was S-300 anti-air missile that unfortunately flew to the territory of Belarus, because when you let your territory be used for Russians to attack Ukraine, sometimes you can expect that to happen, I think. Yeah, they are completely mad about this, but it happens. I mean, there were a few missiles that came to Ukraine from the territory of Belarus, so I think they shouldn't be very angry because of that.
Yeah. I mean, this is similar, I think, to the situation which happened with the missile landing inside Poland. It's one of those, you wouldn't have an accident of this sort occurring if it wasn't for the fact that the Russians are just firing these massive volleys of missiles that Ukraine has to try to defend themselves against. Absent the attack, there would be no accidental air defense missile falling in somebody else's territory.
Absolutely. The problem is that those missiles have this trajectory along the borders with Moldova and Poland, obviously. And there's absolutely no way we can shoot those missiles towards Ukrainian territory because, I don't know, they should be fired from Polish territory, for example. So this is how it happens. Unfortunately, yes, we have such incidents, but there's absolutely nothing we can do about it because we have to protect Ukraine from those missiles.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that you look at a map and you see, okay, here's where Russia is, here's where the Ukraine is, all the missiles are coming this way. No, they're not. Many of these missiles are being launched from either ships in the Black Sea or from aircraft which fly out over other areas and fire the missiles in from different angles, which almost compels the Ukrainian defenses to fire in that direction to intercept them, and that means that if the air defense missile misses, it's going to potentially land in neutral territory.
Yes, I believe that in modern anti-air systems, there is a self-destruction function for those missiles, so they self-destruct if they don't hit their target. I don't think they have that in S-300, those Soviet missiles. That's why there are such incidents, unfortunately. I believe that as soon as we have more modern anti-air systems, we will avoid it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So I apologize. I think I missed a super chat from In Time. If I did miss one, please put it up here and we will read it. Gaming with Robin. If the 100,000 figure in 100,000 figure is correct, they've lost about 6 times the people in the war as they did from 2020, as they did from 2020 car accidents. Gaming with Robin, are you suggesting, and I want to make this clear, are you suggesting that the government of Russia is lying to people?
No way it can happen. No way.
How dare you submit such a thing?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gaming Robin. I think the panel's reaction was very much appropriate. The head of Ukrainian intelligence, the head of Ukrainian intelligence has said that in essence, this war is now at a stalemate. So again, for both of you, but starting with Starsky, what do you think he meant by that, and what does that mean going forward?
Currently, we need more vehicles to be able to perform successful counterattacks. Probably that's what he meant. He also said that starting from 5th of January, they will start another mobilization, which means more troops that will be brought to Ukraine. And possibly they will increase their personnel stationed in Belarus. Currently, they don't have that amount of men they've had in the beginning of the invasion stationed in Belarus. They have done something like 10,000 men, Russian men, and even even together with the Belarusian army, they won't have the same amount of men they've had. So they will not be able to successfully perform attacks on Kiev. They will not take it. It's laughable. But returning to your question, I think it's mostly because we need more support, more weapons, and more armored vehicles for our troops. Currently, Russia has advantage in the number of their armored vehicles. I'm talking about BMDs, BMPs, and things like that.
Yeah. That's an interesting segue for a question I have, which is what is going on from a strategic sense? Because I see a lot of speculation by many people that the Russians are going to launch an attack out of Belarus towards Kiev, supposedly. And given force structures, I can't see that having any chance of success. And at the same time, we have these constant grinding attacks in Bakhmut, which in most scenarios one would think is what we would call a fixing action, where they're trying to hold down Ukrainian forces to prevent them from redeploying elsewhere. So one might suspect that between the whole, okay, we're coming from Belarus, which is a deception, and the fixing operation, that supposedly one would think they're going to come somewhere else for their winter/spring offensive. Ignoring the fact that I don't think they're going to have the capability to conduct an offensive for at least a year. Their troops lack the training. They don't have the equipment, the front top line equipment to do it. And at the same time, Ukraine is getting more and better equipment, and their troops are much more well-trained than the Russians. So I don't see an offensive coming. You have to wonder, what is it that they're trying to accomplish? Are they simply going for a long haul, dig in and try to hold what you already have? And if so, how does that result in a favorable termination of the war for them? I don't see how this is going. I mean, to my thinking, there's no strategic sense to what they're doing right now. It's like they're just flummoxing around, trying to find a strategy by accident.
Knowing Russians, they have this word "avois," which means "what if," I think. And currently, because Putin goes all in, he bets everything he has on this war. I think that he will definitely try to attack from Belarus in order to hold down Ukrainian troops, probably move some of our reserves from the area of Bakhmut towards northern area. And Avos, he will be successful. So they do that a lot, actually.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, if Belarus is so upset about a accidental landing of a Ukrainian anti-air missile in Belarus, which is absolutely tragic. We're all so sad that it happened. Do you think the situation will get better or worse if they invade Ukraine?
I think it's something expected, something that we anticipate. It's not worse or better. Of course, for us, it would be much better if they were just stationed where they are forever. But it's not going to change much anything, in my opinion.
I mean, for them, if they're so sort of Pollyanna that they can't withstand a missile accidentally landing in Belarus, do you think invading Ukraine is a good idea?
I think
I-
better alive than sorry.
I'm just suggesting that perhaps there's going to be more incoming fire that's going to be directed at them if they choose to engage in Ukraine, and that if they're really concerned about rockets landing in their vicinity, best to stay away, stay out of the fight, would be my advice. I am not an expert.
Yeah, it's rather about Belarusian culture because, again, Belarusians and Russians are a bit different. For the things that to us, Ukrainians and Belarusians, are horrible, and we think of those things as, like tragedy, like having no electricity and no heating and stuff like that. For Russians, it's like everyday life. Okay, and they're completely used to, they're completely accustomed to this style of life. They were talking about freezing Ukraine and the Europe, of course, but at the meantime, the whole Altai has no heating, and their children have to study remotely, and I think it's like my personal opinion that sometimes for Russians, dying is the best, exit, the best sort of ending those sufferings. It's not for Belarusians; it's different for them. So I don't think they will appreciate this idea.
All right, a couple more questions. I'm going to start with Commander McMillan on this one. You had mentioned earlier about the increased flights back and forth between Russia and China. Now, China had kind of distanced themselves a bit from Russia, especially when Russia was talking about, nuclear weapons. They were suggesting that they were on the table. Russia has moved back from that. China is now getting a bit closer to them again, and we hear that they've in fact just been speaking over the phone and reiterating that they are planning on improving their cooperation. This would be, for China at least, they're aware that Russia at this point has very few options in getting support of any kind. They're getting it from Iran. That's about it. How concerned are you about this increase in, so the return of the oh boy, that's not. It's difficult, and I know you. It's just like we're best of friends, but we don't talk to each other. Kind of. It's been. But what are your? Do you have any concerns, or what are your thoughts on the recent developments in their relationship?
The Russian-Chinese relationship has always been a rather strange and strained one. They have a big common border. They don't particularly trust one another. But at the same time, you have to realize China's undergoing a lot of pressure internally right now. And so if they can sell non-military hardware, and let's be honest, tents and jackets and socks and whatever, that's non-military, even if it's going to the Russian military. So it's not going to generate a lot of hate and discontent on the international scene if they're selling non-military stuff to the Russians. Getting that income when so much of their income right now is imperiled because of the COVID crisis inside China. And it's to the extent that the Chinese had controlled COVID spread by basically imposing a complete lockdown across the entire country that lasted for months. And finally, social pressure demanded that they lift that, so they did. And now they've got a huge health crisis with just hospitals flooded with people and people dying in droves from, the virus. So this is a little bit of a way to alleviate some of that pressure by getting some money flowing into the coffers of the capitalist side of the economy, or the ones who are putting pressure on the government. So if they're getting money in and they can kind of alleviate some of those social pressures, it's all to the good for them. You'll also notice at the same time tensions between China and Taiwan and China and the U.S. over the South China Sea area have all been ratcheting up of lately, and that's very normal with Chinese politics. Is that when you see internal pressure inside China start to become an issue, they create these, for lack of a better word, fictitious incidents and tensions to distract the population from the fact that the central government isn't doing its job. So that's part of what's going on. So I think that's why they're playing this game, and trying to get in good graces with the Russians while this is going on probably plays into that, because that's one less thing they have to worry about if they're creating tensions between the U.S. and Taiwan and themselves. And apparently the Japanese are getting pissed at them too. So if it's one less potential foreign foe that you have to worry about, in other words, Russia, it's all to the good for them. Does that make sense to you?
That does. I think the economic issue is actually very important to understand. We've talked about that before on In Time, but I think they've lost a lot of their manufacturing, their ability to even sustain themselves as a country, because the lockdowns were so brutal. And now they've got the problem of you can't ramp that back up right away. It's been like a year that they've been completely locked down. But in addition to them now trying to rebuild and get that up and running, COVID is now striking a whole bunch of people who have no natural immunity, and their own vaccines are not particularly effective. So they are going to have to find some source of revenue and some way to distract the people from thinking about that. So saber rattling, I think. So that makes a lot of sense with stuff that we've... One of the things I love about having you guys on is I can repeat what you've told me like weeks ago and make it sound like I knew what I was talking about the whole time. So this is all stuff you guys have said before. I was like, well, as you gentlemen know, but...
Damn, Nick, you're so profound.
I know, right? It's almost like I went to the Naval War College. So, all right, Starsky, any thoughts on the burgeoning relationship between China and Russia? Although somebody pointed out, and I thought this was interesting, this was put in, China is getting close to Russia the way a spider gets close to a fly. But Starsky, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree on that. It's a good comparison because China cares about China, and they care about their trade with the West more than their trade with China, of course, the Russia. And we know that they have some interest in Eastern Russian territories as well. Yeah, they don't really trust each other, but again, they have to, show at least some kind of support, because it brings profit, and if it brings profit, then why not?
All right, so two more questions. I think the first one is, and we've had this kind of discussion before, but I'd like to give you a couple of minutes, Starsky, to let those of us who don't know, what is for you, or for just an average Ukrainian, trying to get through their day, trying to get to work, trying to raise a family. What is that like? What is an average day right now like for your average Ukrainian?
Currently, we have improved situation with our power grid, fortunately. And for example, during the Christmas holiday, we had electricity for the whole day, which was unheard of for quite a while. And it's different in different regions, in different districts of Kyiv, for example. Some of those have different schedules of blackouts, planned blackouts. Sometimes when people have no electricity, they also don't have heating. in condominiums, in multi-story buildings, for example. It can work like that if people have autonomous heating, for example. I had this problem on my previous apartment, and so people buy a lot of power banks, of course, to be able to charge their phones, etc. Sometimes when we have blackouts, our children are unable to study remotely because the communications towers go down as well, and we have no internet. We still have a phone connection, but we don't have mobile internet working, and it causes a lot of problems. I can say that our small business suffers from that. But again, businessmen are buying generators to make sure they can run their businesses. And this is how we live, basically. Sometimes after airstrikes, sometimes if they are successful for Russians, we have blackouts for days. Kids are freezing. They have to wear winter clothes while at home, and go to sleep wearing winter jackets and hats and boots. A lot of people don't understand that, specifically those who think that they should sacrifice Ukraine to make sure Russia don't attack their country. Recently, I saw this. My former favorite comedian, Louis C.K. He was so like mad. He said, "Have you seen all those Ukrainian, like young Ukrainian people who watch those videos of Russian soldiers being eliminated, and they celebrate it, how cruel they are?" And basically it's when such people as Louis C.K. Wake up in the morning in the warm house, and of course, because they have electricity, they can make coffee, and then because they have internet, they can access, for example, YouTube and see those videos. And oh my God, it's so amazing how they can celebrate death of Russian soldiers. Unfortunately, yeah, there are such people out there, but I know that is, the perception changes completely when people arrive to Ukraine from other countries and they see what happens here for real. And yeah, there is a very easy way to learn how we can celebrate 100,000 dead orcs. Basically, come to Ukraine and you will see everything.
Well,
I think there's an additional side to that a lot of people don't think about. I mean, I'm sure the Ukrainians are aware of it, and I wouldn't be surprised if many other Eastern Europeans are aware of it, but Americans and a lot of other folks aren't. And it's that, yeah, a lot of, roughly 1 million Russians have fled Russia since the start of the war. And a lot of folks think this is because they're protesting the war. They don't, it's not. Many of them actually support the war. They just don't want to be the ones that have to go to the front and fight. The troops on the front whose morale is low and who are deserting or refusing orders, it's not necessarily because they think there's anything necessarily wrong with attacking Ukraine. It's they don't want to be on the receiving end of Ukrainian fires at themselves, that kind of stuff. It's there is a definite and fairly pronounced level of what I can only call racism on the part of the Russians towards the Ukrainians. So yeah, you've got this mutual hatred between two groups, and I think at least the Ukrainian side of that hatred is justified, because almost on a daily basis, the Russian government is attacking civilian infrastructure. They're not confining the war to a military operation. They have extended it to a terror operation. They're trying to destroy Ukrainian national morale by killing as many people and by destroying as much civilian infrastructure as possible. Conversely, I think the Ukrainian military and government have done an excellent job of trying to confine all their responses to this Russian aggression to strictly military targets. So I think that needs to be factored into these sensibilities and reactions to, oh yeah, the Ukrainians are horrible people because they're celebrating the deaths of all these Russians. Well, yes, but ... and I think that needs to be a major part of the consideration.
Of course, we are celebrating because they don't attack your country, and we are celebrating because we know that our children won't have to fight them in the future.
Exactly.
Well, and so come join us on the Discord. We've been following this and any other major, either U.S. or international story. But we have a separate channel on our Discord. We have a Ukraine channel and we have a Ukraine explicit channel. And we have to keep the explicit channel isolated. You have to opt into it, and the reason is it's serious. And on occasion, we will do shows where we really get into what's been happening there. Those shows instantly get demonetized. You actually have to have a YouTube account to watch those shows because they have to verify the age is over 18. So, but in them, and we do them because we think it's important to discuss the reality of what's going on. I'm not going to mention it right now, but we've talked about war crimes, and it's not a joke. It's not a, we think there are war crimes. It's absolute irrefutable evidence of war crime after war crime after war crime on civilians, the targeting of civilians. And what's on that channel is coming right from the front lines, and unfortunately, as much of it is about civilians as it is about anybody else. So I can understand. I can understand the Ukrainians having a need to celebrate any victory against that kind of aggression. And so I'm going to ask you this, Starsky. The war started 309 days ago. If I want to, this question is in two parts. All my questions are in like 2 to 6 parts, so you're just going to have to get used to it. The first part is, if 310 days ago I had said, how many funerals do you attend on average for people that you know? What would your answer be? And if I asked you today, on average, how many funerals do you attend, say, a week or a month? How many is it now for people that you know?
Now it's usually a couple of them per month, 1, 2 per month. Sometimes those guys are being buried like on a Western Ukraine, etc. Unfortunately, I cannot go there because I'm attached to Hostomel. It's too far for me. But if you ask me how many people I know are dying each month, I would say 3 to 5 usually. And 310 days ago, it would be 1 in 3 months, 1 in 5 months, probably. Prior to invasion, in my brigade, we had 4 men dead. So my brigade operates on the front line since 2016. And between 2016 and 2021, we lost 4 men dead, even though we were deployed to some pretty tough areas of the front line during this period, like 𝐒𝐤𝐿𝐴 Bulge multiple times. And we had quite a few wounded guys, but we didn't have as much casualties. Now it's quite a lot, I would say. After so before Bakhmut, while we were defending 𝐒𝐕𝐲𝐻 and Severodonetsk for 4 months, we lost 49 men dead.
Louis C.K. has gotten into a lot of trouble for saying a lot of things, but I got to say, of all the things that he said, the idea that I think he was the one who talked about, them like teenagers partying at nightclubs in Ukraine, and it's, if you're not living it, I think you have to be real careful how much you criticize people trying to find normalcy in a war condition. So let's wrap this up. Commander, any final thoughts or words before we bail?
Not really. I think we've covered most of the important stuff that's going on at present. I will, since we're coming up on New Year, I will ask one question of Starsky. Where do you see things going in the next year?
In the next year, if everything goes as planned, as it goes right now, when we see Russians losing like 2,000 men per day, both in dead and wounded, probably we can expect so our optimistic anticipation is that this war will be finished around March. Realistic, probably autumn next year. And my most pessimistic anticipation is years from now, 2-3 years at least.
All right, and thank you, Commander. It was a pleasure as always. Operator Starsky, any final thoughts or anything that you'd like to say before we head out?
As usual, thank you for supporting my country. It's very important for all of us.
I genuinely wish we didn't have to, but it is a genuine honor to be able to at least do something for it, which is our pleasure, absolutely. So thank you all for joining us. And once again, if you can subscribe to this channel over time, it's going to help us out a huge deal. We're undergoing some growing pains as we split our content. It makes it easier for us to get the content that you want to see to you. If you like just the news, you subscribe to Overtime. If you like the interviews and discussions, you subscribe to In Time. If you like both, you subscribe to both. It's entirely up to you, but we need to try to get this channel to 1,000 subs. That way we can get super chats, we can monetize, we can have a community page, and all sorts of things change. But since it's a new channel, we've got the growing pains while we're doing it. So just that one subscribe really helps us out so that we can bring it up to the sister channel of In Time. So thank you all for joining us. Please join us on the Discord if you want to talk. Commander McMillan makes himself available on the Discord quite regularly. And we look forward, Operator Starsky, to seeing you happy, healthy, and fully functional for our next show a week from now.
Thank you so much.